As I said before, I'd like to welcome everybody here tonight. I'm absolutely thrilled that we have some of our elected officials here. I don't know if you guys want to stand up or not, but I will point it out. We've got our House of Delegates member, Mark Berg. We have our Board of Supervisors, Gary Lofton, back here in the back. And we have Chuck Hayden with us. We also have a former candidate for the Congress here, Mark Sabat, who decided to come along. Most everybody's going to be interested to know that we have Tiffany Banbeck here, who's representative from the NRA. Yay! I'm really delighted that we were able to get Tom DeWeese to come over here and speak with us this evening. We've learned an awful lot from a lot of the things that he's put out over the last couple of years, and he travels the country doing this all the time. He founded the American Policy Center, I think, close to 20 years ago.
86.
And he's one of the foremost property rights experts in the country. He's been a businessman, grassroots activist, writer, and publisher. And as such, he's always advocated a firm belief that man's need to keep moving forward while protecting our constitutionally guaranteed rights, and among those are the right to own property. So if everybody would welcome him, we're going to give this program over to Tom DeWeese to teach us a few things.
I do appreciate everybody coming out tonight, and I'm thrilled that meetings like this are taking place all over the country. And I'm after several years, maybe 18 years or so in the wilderness, where people weren't listening, and we kept saying, listen, listen, listen. People weren't getting it. All of a sudden, about 2 or 3 years ago, this thing exploded. And I'm thrilled to be with the folks, you people who are on the front lines, you people who are, it's a lot harder what you do than it is what I do. I can come into town and stir you up and leave, but you guys have to stay here and fight. You know, as you all know, there is a great controversy taking place across the nation about Agenda 21 and its policy called Sustainable Development. In nearly every community in the nation, there is now a debate raging over rules and regulations that are changing the face of our towns and of our nation. But you know, you just mentioned Agenda 21 in most public meetings, and elected officials will quickly put you down and accuse you of spreading conspiracy theories. Why? What's it all about? Why the denials? You know, it's funny. I started doing some research, and I found that planning groups and non-governmental organizations, people who are promoting Agenda 21, up until about 2005, everything they put out said, yep, this is Agenda 21. This is a comprehensive blueprint for all this. And then we started to get some coverage. We started to take some root. And all of a sudden it became, well, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, this isn't that. Isn't that interesting? But what is Agenda 21? Why do we think it's a threat? I've been in the center of this fight to expose Agenda 21 for more than 2 decades. So let me give you just a quick explanation of this, what I think, and I think a lot of people think is an explosive issue, at least from my perspective. For the past 3 decades, the UN and a host of environmental organizations, many of which are accredited and partially funded by the UN, have convinced much of the world that the planet is on its last legs. They warn us that we are on the path to environmental Armageddon. And they warn us that we will surely perish unless government enacts powerful rules and regulations that force people to behave in a specific way. They believe that the only way to fix the problem is to control the flow of resources and wealth, which literally means changing human civilization and the way we live. The problem is, this kind of forced transformation of our society necessarily leads to a thirst for power. and top-down control. I know best. I can tell you what to do. You know where that leads? Eventually that leads to tyranny. And so today, we are seeing vast changes in our society, and people want to know why. Who's to blame? What's going on? Americans find themselves no longer secure in their own property. People are being arrested for doing things on their property that was their obvious right one time, but now is in violation of hidden, confusing regulations that result in fines and even imprisonment. Here's just a few examples of what is happening to ordinary Americans just trying to live their lives through this wrenching transformation of our nation. I'm sure you've all heard of the infamous Supreme Court decision, Kelo versus New London, in Connecticut, in which the Supreme Court, the designated protectors of the Constitution, obliterated American private property rights by determining that a community can take any property it wants for private development, just for common good. What you may not have heard is the story of the terror brought down on the property owners in New London, in that case, who just wanted to keep their homes. After a year of intimidation and harassment by the city government, which included phone calls at all hours of the night, government officials knocking on their doors, insisting that homeowners sign contracts to sell their homes, finally, some of the homeowners began to cave into the pressure and they sold. Immediately, the government sent in a bulldozer to knock down that home. You know what they did then? They moved the bulldozer to the house next door and just let it sit there while they began to put pressure on them. And that process was repeated, house after house after house, until the neighborhood looked like a war zone. Finally, roads were blocked, denying residents access to their own homes. The city government never had a reason to even want the land. There was no plan. It was just decided, we'll take the property because we can. And the Supreme Court agreed to all of that. They said it was okay for the common good. Here's a bit of insight, maybe put in perspective. Sustainable development cannot be imposed if property rights are protected. In a little community in Nevada called Jarbidge, there was an earthquake that moved rocks and debris into the road that was the access to the town. The worst was a 5-ton rock that literally closed the road. People couldn't get in or out. Jarbidge is located in the Humboldt National Forest, and so comes under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Forest Service. The Forest Service used the blocked road as an opportunity to stop public access to public lands as part of what is called the Wildlands Project. The Wildlands Project calls for their word, rewilding of 50% of all the land in every state in the United States of America, back to the way it was before Christopher Columbus came here. It is fully outlined today in the UN's Biodiversity Treaty. So the Forest Service issued an order that the road was not to be cleared. The result would kill the town and grow the wilderness. That changed quickly on July 4th of 2000. The Forest Service didn't count on several hundred American citizens from across the nation. Upon hearing of the plight of the folks at Jarbidge, they took action. They organized the Jarbidge Shovel Brigade, and they descended on the area and they cleared the road, moving by hand the 5-ton rock, while the Forest Service stood by, unable to do anything because of publicity. Throughout the West, the federal government is enforcing wolf and bear reintroduction. The result is residents are being terrorized by packs of wolves and growing populations of grizzly bears. Family pets and livestock are being destroyed. A lady in Idaho was walking down her driveway toward her home one night about dusk when she realized there were a pack of wolves lying in the yard in front of her house. As she approached, they got up and they began to surround her. They were hungry. She got on her cell phone to call for help from a neighbor who had just let her off at the end of the driveway as the wolves crept closer and closer. They were almost upon her when the help finally arrived. Yet even as the landscape is covered with the carcasses of their livestock and their pets, and I've seen the photographs of what these wolves have done, the government continually assures such residents that these predators are no danger to them. Give them a little pet, bear hug, what the heck. And those of the cities aren't safe from such sustainable development policy. In Orem, Utah, Betty Perry was arrested, handcuffed, and put in a holding tank because the grass in her front yard was dying. Violation, said the local zoning enforcement officer. Julie Bass in Oak Park, Michigan, wanted to plant an organic garden in her yard. She even asked the mayor and the city council if it was okay, and they both said yes. And so she went to work. And all of a sudden, up pops the local zoning commissioner, whatever the title was, and she too was arrested. And she faces jail 90 days. Under the regulations issued by county planning commissions, homeowners have been arrested and even jailed for not cutting their grass short enough. Again, according to sustainable policy, single-family homes are unsustainable. That's what it says in their documents. I didn't make that up. They said it. This is the kind of harassment that drives you out of your single-family home. How long can you put up with it? Power companies, in partnership with government, are now installing smart meters on private homes. These meters give the power company the control over the temperature in your home. They will control the thermostat as a means to cut your carbon footprint under the excuse of stopping global warming. Americans across the nation are beginning to protest this invasion into their private property. And the government is beginning to respond to these protests with a jackboot. In Naperville, Illinois, the local power company targeted a neighborhood of 245 homes to receive the smart meters. 16 residents said no. The response from the city government, they announced that it will now provide a police escort for the installers. 2 ladies were arrested just for trying to keep these installers and the police from storming onto their property against their will. A beekeeper was charged with harboring livestock in an area where livestock was prohibited. And to you and me, livestock means horses and cows and goats. Not so when unelected planning boards want to make a point of control. Insects now fit the bill. Across the nation, the Food and Drug Administration is swarming over producers of unprocessed milk, confiscating products and shutting down plants, arresting producers and buyers alike, even though there has never been a report of sickness or death, not even a complaint. On another farm, goats were confiscated and destroyed for mad cow disease, yet they were not even tested. In Montgomery County, Ohio, Jenny Granado and her family are the victims of the Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission as they are forcing a bike path across their property. This isn't a path, this is a bike highway. It took their entire front yard. And the path runs within 7 feet of their front door. Bicycles whizzing along at 30 miles an hour, they can't walk out the front door. The entire front yard was removed. The house has become unlivable. And they've been offered virtually